Now, you know, this getting older thing. First of all, I don't like to talk about it much. I don't like to think about it much. I don't much like doing it. And in some way, I think it's good not to think about it, not to talk about it, not to dwell on it. Because I think that in that way, you feel younger. And if you feel younger, you act younger. If you act younger, you kind of are younger. So I think it does help not to sit around and dwell on every ache and pain and everything. Although if you have those aches and pains, they're pretty bad when you get older, so it's really hard to ignore. I find it really hard not to talk about it. I guess that's it. People are like, well, old people, they just sit around and whine about what's wrong with them. Yeah, but it's really bad. It's like really bad, and you can't really ignore it. So sorry, wait till you get there. That's all I got to say. And you know what? I have to say too, when I was younger, I had older aunts, uncles, and oh, they'd complain about this is wrong or that's wrong and I would be like, oh, geez, they're always complaining about. I got older and I went, they are so forgiven. They are so forgiven. And boy, wasn't I a little shit. you know, this is the new perspective. So, anyway, but as you get older, I think that many people have a bucket list of things that they would like to do, or like to experience, or like to see, or things they'd like to see again. And I have that. And so there's a number of things that I have on my bucket list. One is not only doing music, but going further with it. I really want some music instruction again. And I want to go as far with it as I'm able to. So there is that. And of course, I want to develop my languages even better than what I am now. I have the grammatical concepts and things like this, and I'm learning a fair amount of vocabulary and everything. It's just that I don't have a good partner for the languages. I don't use it like I should, and therefore it's not coming out of my mouth like it should. I'm not becoming fluent. Well, I'd like to be. So that is another thing on my list. But can you imagine? So most of the people, not all, most of the people I'm talking to, not all, probably don't have a mountain outside their house every day. But at one time in my life, I had a mountain right outside. In fact, I was at the foot of Pikes Peak, and if you went out on our back deck, it was a condo that we were in, upstairs, downstairs, and if you went out on the back deck, there was Pikes Peak in all its glory, and you could literally, we were so close, you could see the cars going up and down the road, up and down the mountain, because there's a road to the freaking top. I've been up there more than one occasion. I even drove myself up there once. So after my divorce, one of my things was to do mountain driving myself with no help, and I did. And so I got myself up to the top of Pikes Peak. I was very proud of myself. For a while, I had a bumper sticker that said, "Women don't need guardrails." I'd like to have that back. Anyway, so if you can imagine what it's like to wake up every day and go out and see this beautiful mountain in all its glory, or to see other mountains. Now, I used to hike. Of course, I was in better shape than I am now, trust me. And I would go up to about 10,000 feet or so in elevation, and I would hike at Mueller State Park in the southern part of Colorado. And I hiked by myself, but I had trails that I knew, and I knew where those trails went. And also, one thing that I had were trails that you could go into. If you got tired, you could come out, you could turn around and go back. So I always tried not to bite off more than I can chew. Although I did once. I'll tell you that story. You might need to hear that story. I had a big scare, and it was from not being careful to stay within my limits. But most of the time, the majority of time, I stayed well within my limits. I knew what I could do. I knew what I could not do. I took a backpack. The backpack had first aid stuff. It had a number of things in it. You know, things to scare away a bear or whatever. I mean, you know, there were all kinds of things in there. And one thing that was in there also was my Bible, my, you know, things to write. I used to write poetry out there, you know, just things to write with and things like that. So there was just, mostly it was practical stuff. I kept a little, you know, protein bars and things in case I got stuck or something. Emergency blanket, you know, things like that. I always had those things on me, which mostly I never used, but I had them, you know, so I was really careful about what I did. But then, you know, there were places that I would go on this hike where you could go out and literally just sit down on a rock, and in front of you is the Front Range of the mountains, just spread out in front of you. And it just gave you this sense of awe, and it's like, you know, it really helps you think about who you are and your place, as I'm just sort of a small person in this grandeur of the universe, you know, that's so much larger than myself. It's really just amazing, just amazing. So one of the last things I did before I moved to this area was that I went out there and I sat down and I looked at it and I said, are you going to be okay without this? And I thought about it and I said, I don't know. I don't know. It meant a lot to me. Now at the time I was teaching, and that was sort of how I decompressed from teaching. You know, I would go out there. Sometimes you'd meet people, but not very often. And it got to where I was meeting people a little more frequently. It was getting to be a little more popular. But when I first started going out there, I met nobody. And it was just like, I just can't explain it, but it was just this sense of awe and grandeur. It was just like, wow, you know. And I was fairly safe, you know. I wasn't anywhere I'd fall or anything like that. Basically, I'd go out to an edge, but I wouldn't go to the edge. I'd stay back a little bit, and then I'd just sit on a flat rock and just could see. You know, I'm not one of these people that does a lot of stupid stuff. And I really knew what I was doing, you know, and everything, and I learned a lot about all kinds of things. But, yeah, I asked myself, are you going to be okay without this? And I just didn't know. I just didn't know. So now, looking back on it, I am okay without it, but I'd like to see it again. I'd like to see it and experience it again. I really would. That, and I'd really like to see the ocean. I would really like to see the ocean. And I don't know, I've always wanted to see the Northern Lights. That one's starting to look less and less possible. I was really hoping to see them someday. And there's just things like that that I just like to experience. And the problem with me is that if I experience it once, I'll want to experience it again. So once isn't going to be enough, but at some point it's going to have to be, I guess. But, you know, life isn't infinite. Well, it might be. I mean, as far as if you're a religious person, you're looking forward to a life hereafter, life may be infinite that way. But this life on this earth is not infinite. It's only so long. And I just want to squeeze the most that I can squeeze out of it. And not only that, there are just some things that just do my soul good. And I want those things. So I would like to see mountains again. And I've had a lot of mountains in my life. So I lived in Colorado and I had all kinds of mountains. I'd go up north, those are a whole different bunch of mountains. You'd go where I lived, there was a whole different bunch of mountains. You go further south, there's a whole different bunch of mountains. Went to the sand dunes. So there is some desert in southern Colorado, and the sand dunes are amazing too. And then I went to Utah, and I told myself, forget Colorado, Utah mountains. Oh, they top the Colorado mountains. They do. I think the mountains in Utah were just amazing, and so anyway, um, I'm glad I experienced those. And the cover for this will be mountains in Utah, not in Colorado. I don't have a lot of pictures from Colorado right now, but I've got some from Utah. So the mountains that I'm going to put on the cover are from Provo, Utah. Um, and then I've seen mountains in Mexico. I had a friend down in Mexico. Went down to visit her in 2007 and 8, and one of the mountains was a volcano. She lived in Jalapa, and Jalapa is a pretty big city. They have a big cathedral and everything there. They're pretty big. But we went to the park, and they have a beautiful downtown park, just beautiful. All these, kind of tropical flowers. Oh, the parrots fly over. It's really, really, really pretty. But there's a big mountain, and I looked up at this mountain, and I said, that's not a cloud. I said, that's smoke coming out of the mountain. And she goes, oh yeah, it's a volcano. I was like, oh, how nice. And there was smoke coming out of the mountain. I'd never seen a volcano before. And apparently there's some activity because that's what causes smoke. But it has not erupted. I mean, that was 2007 and 8. I have not heard of an eruption of that particular mountain. She said it never did. But you never say never with volcanoes. Volcanoes can sit there for hundreds of years and then one day, okay, that's it, we're done. you know. But it was beautiful. And I just went, I'm looking at an actual volcano. And so I have seen one. And then I have also been up to Washington and Oregon, and I saw a whole bunch of different mountains up there. Went up to Mount Rainier, which is quite interesting place. I don't think I ever saw it. I think we were in so much fog the entire time, I don't think I ever saw the place. But I was on it. I stood on it. Crazy. I have not seen Mount St. Helens. I would like to, even this day, see Mount St. Helens, but I have not. But anyway, I've seen a good deal of mountains. I have definitely had mountains in my life, and missing them. But I'd like to see the ocean too. I'd really like to see the ocean. I'd just like to have more life in my life. Does that make sense?